Hello everyone, this is Noodle, and with this video I would like to say thank you DICE. This upcoming patch that's coming out looks fantastic, and a lot of this patch I've made videos about. A lot of the stuff in the patch I've said this is way OP, and I would like to thank DICE for probably not watching my videos, but listening to the community and fixing these things that just needed to be fixed in the game. Let's go through what's in this patch. Number 1, the aircraft and anti-aircraft. They're reducing the total amount of missiles the mobile anti-aircraft has from 6 to 4. And this is great because those guys with the AA are sitting back in their base, camping their butts off with their non-skilled active radar missiles. Now they don't have that many. Now you can use your flares for the first active radar missiles, and you can soak up 2 of those things, and that's not that big of a deal. And the next thing that also involves the anti-aircraft vehicle is the reducing the physical impact of all the missiles when they hit helicopters. This is huge. I cannot count how many times I've been in a Little Bird, popped flares, popped my ECM, still got hit by some Phantom missiles. Apparently the ECM and flares don't work all the time, and just flipped over and died with 80% health. That is so annoying. Thank you DICE for fixing that. Another thing I talked about in my very first video about the anti-aircraft vehicle is the 20mm cannon. Right now it fires at 1200 meters per second. They are reducing that to 800 meters per second. That is exactly what I suggested, because it will now travel slower. You will now have to lead your target more, making you have to use more skill and making it not so easy to shoot vehicles from way across the map. Maps like Eltai Range will now be more playable due to the fact that guys can't sit back in their base and just shoot you from completely across the map. And a direct nerf of the active radar missiles. Thank the Lord. The cone of fire of the active radar missiles, in which they will now home in on the target, has been reduced. Yep, these things will still be in the game. You're still going to get those jet pilots flying straight at you and firing them when they're 2 feet from you and then ramming you, as most of them do. But at least the AAs won't be able to use these things so effectively and just really ruin flying on maps with anti-aircraft vehicles. Another interesting thing is they're increasing the damage done by the attack helicopter's gunner cannon. You know what? I think this is a good buff. I've been in the attack helicopter a little bit in the gunner seat, and I really don't think they do that much damage. The attack chopper in Battlefield 4, I think, could use a bit more of a buff. It doesn't handle that well. In Battlefield 3, the Little Bird was the big turd in the sky, but in Battlefield 4, I had one of my subscribers say it drives like a Jeep, the attack chopper that is. And I have to agree, this thing is fast in a straight line, but it doesn't handle that well, so a little bit of a buff with the gunner seat, I think that's a good thing. Another thing with the attack chopper, they're increasing the direct hit damage from the Zuni rockets, which I've used the Zuni rockets on the attack chopper, and I, after about 2 lifespans of using them, realized there's absolutely no use for these things on the attack chopper because they just don't work that well. I think it's a good buff. I think people might start using the senior rockets on the attack chopper. Another nerf which I don't know if I'm happy about. They touched my Little Bird. They're reducing the splash damage on the 25mm cannons on the scout helicopters, which will make it harder for you now to take out enemy infantry with the 25mm cannons. But you know what? It's going to require more skill. You're now going to have to use the miniguns for enemy infantry, or you can still use the 25mm cannons, but you're going to have to hit the enemy closer than you did before. Before you had to hit them pretty darn close, but the splash damage was pretty good, where you could pretty much bounce those things off of walls and kill people, so this is probably a pretty good nerf overall. They probably were a bit too overpowered. And I think one of the best nerfs they've done here is they're reducing the intelligence of the LAW missiles, requiring the players to aim the missile closer to the target before the smart projectile will activate. This means basically you can't get the thing within 25 meters of it and have it hit the target. You got to get it pretty much over top of it or pretty darn close before that thing realizes it's next to a vehicle and hits the target. The Law missile is way overpowered in Battlefield 4. I think this is a pretty darn good nerf that needed to be done, and I'm glad they did it. And oh, thank God they reduced the range on the M2 slams from 6 meters to 3 meters. They halved it. Basically, if anybody set up an M2, actually it takes 3 M2 slams. You set them up next to each other in any vehicle that drove within 6 meters. 6 meters is about 25 feet for you guys here who use feet. Anything within 25 feet, the vehicle would explode and guarantee you a death. And in Battlefield 4, I found it's a lot harder to spot those little buggers. In Battlefield 3, I almost never got killed by enemy mines, but in Battlefield 4, it's hard. Those things hide pretty well. They don't show up on the thermal optics as well, and that's another thing I recommend. If you're looking out for those things, always use thermal optics, because easy to spot that way. Always be hitting that Q button at the ground when you're not looking for enemies, and therefore you can see them easier because they pop up just like you're spotting an enemy infantry. And the last but not least, they reduced the damage of the staff shell on all targets by 25%. This definitely needed to happen. This staff shell is way overpowered. I've made a couple videos about it. I made a direct video about when will this thing get nerfed, because it needs to be nerfed badly, and I'm glad it's being nerfed. The big question is, will you still be able to quick switch the staff shell, or will you have to switch back and wait for an entire reload cycle for the staff shell to come up? If this doesn't happen, I think the staff shell will still be overpowered. But if they nerf this thing, just like in Battlefield 3, you used to be able to quick switch the canister shell to do a little extra damage, and then they nerfed it to wait a full reload cycle, I think this would be a good nerf if they take that full step and make you shoot your main shell, and if you want to switch to your staff shell for your next shot, wait an entire reload cycle and then shoot that thing. Because where it stands right now, the staff shell is way too powerful, way overused, and it still will be used if they don't take this next step and nerf that far. Again, I'd like to thank DICE for making these nerfs, making these couple little buffs. I think it's the best patch they've come out with yet, the best balancing patch. I pretty much talked about every one of these things and how they're overpowered in game. I think they've done a fantastic job on this patch. I'd like to thank all of you for watching. If you'd like to see daily tactics, how-to guides, and hardcore Battlefield 4 strategy, please subscribe to my channel. My name is Noodle, and until next time, always remember, you do